video. Okay, see you soon.
See you guys.
Our education staff at Sweetwater Discovery. So we'll have somebody, an educator at every station to talk you through what each station's all about. Starting with the Indigenous discovery or the production, the original production of maple syrup, moving kind of modernizing towards early European settlers. Their improved production methods and tools. There's a bunch of furs you can touch and stuff like that over there. That's okay. As you head in, you'll get to the sugar shack, which is heated, so you can actually go in. There's a demonstration, so you can see how we make maple syrup. We've been harvesting from the trees on this property for the last week, so it's full production. And then that side field over here, when you get to the sugar shack, it's full of, we got giant games and obstacle course kind of things over there, climate change station, there's a tool shop, and then the pancake house. So all your food, that's kind of probably what you're here for. There's more than just pancakes. There's pulled pork on poutine and lots of different munchies over there. So that's all of your spending kind of happens at the pancake house. You don't need anything more from me. Takes you around. You're gonna end at the park store here. That's where the taffy station is. So if you got taffy, that's where you're gonna claim it to save room after the pancake house. And it spits you out right back to this parking lot.
Sorry, it's DJ.
Welcome to the Sweetwater Station. So in this station, I'm going to be with how Indigenous people may have made maple syrup from maple sap. So first we're going to start off with a land acknowledgement. So we acknowledge the land on which we gather. The entire Credit River watershed is part of the treaty lands of the territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. Specifically, this land is part of treaty number 9. I'm going to start off by talking about the calendar system that some Indigenous peoples may have used. So as you can see, this is the turtle shell. So Indigenous peoples may have used the scales of this turtle shell to determine what season it was that year. So for instance, there was a shell to determine when strawberries were in season, and that was called the strawberry moon. And then there was also a scale to determine the maple moon, and that would be when the maple syrup was in season. So the men would head out for the gathering of the maple syrup, and they would bring just the basic equipment that they needed, and the women would stay back to create fish nests, because the next moon after the maple moon was going to be the sucker moon, and sucker is a type of fish that the women would be hunting while the men were out collecting the sap. So basically, they would be collecting the sap. That one, yes, great job. This is a maple sugar tree. So I'm going to be doing a little demonstration. We're going to be using, this is of course just a stump of a maple sugar tree. So essentially what the men would look for when they went out digging for the sap is they would look for trees with dark gray bark, and they would also commonly be found near the hemlock trees. And the hemlock trees were also a really convenient spot, because in the hemlock trees the men would find porcupines. As you guys will probably see what a porcupine looks like. These little guys would be hiding in the trees. They also like to eat the sap from the maple trees. So they'd be a really hearty meal for the men while they were hunting. They'd be able to easily catch a porcupine since they have very poor sight and slow moving. So it was a really great meal for the men while they were out collecting the sap.
Susunod na naman. Oh, this is the next process ng maple syrup. go this way.
So feel free to gather around. Arrive. Hello. Good morning. Welcome. Alrighty. Very nice and punctual group. I like it. Alright, how's everyone doing this morning? Yeah. Feeling warm? Cold?
Go!
It is pretty cold today. Hopefully the fire might help. But yeah, welcome everyone to our Settled Into Spring station. I believe everyone just finished up the Sweetwater station, so you might have learned some ways that indigenous people might have, produced and collected maple syrup, sap and turned into syrup. So today we're actually going to talk a little bit about how early European settlers actually learned these techniques and had a very similar process to getting the sap into syrup. So I'm going to start. You might be noticing that I'm holding something in my hand. Right? This is a ladle. So this is actually one of the things that you'll notice is that we have a lot of metal here, right? A lot of iron and different techniques. Similar techniques, but different materials. So I'm going to start by quickly showing you what the process might have looked like back then. So you'll notice here that we have different fires and the sitars are being tended to. But you'll notice that they go from really big pot, a little smaller, and then the smallest, right? All this is intentional, and all of it you'll come to see was that this was a lot more efficient, and you can actually get more maple syrup than the previous station, right? So I'm gonna quickly start by showing you.
This is almost like a drill, right? Like maybe for those familiar with like modern day processes, we might use like an electric drill to actually drill into the trees. But this is called a bit and brace. Okay, so essentially, when it came to collecting maple syrup, it was actually a bit of a family experience. Okay, so it was typically the fathers, right, the men that would go out and tap into the trees. So they would use something like this, right, bit and brace. And I'm gonna pretend this is my big strong maple. And they used to put a lot of pressure with this hand, right, with this part, and with the other hand, they would twist. Okay, so you push it like this. I think everyone can see. Great. You push it like this, and this, until you get about 1.5 to 2 inches deep. Okay, so imagine
On, let's just say 300 trees, right? It was very tiring, one could imagine, like I'm already out of breath just like doing a couple rotations and talking, right? So anyways, yeah, that was like the men's job, right? I'm hearing, it looks like water, right? And that's because most of the sap that's collected, it's like 97% water, so there's like a slight little tint to it, but it looks mostly like water. So essentially, and I actually forgot to jump to mention this, but who's left in the family? The mothers, right? So we had like the mothers, the grandmothers. They were actually in charge of making sure that the fire never goes out, and they were the ones that would kind of be monitoring the boiling of the sap, right? So this is a process that can take many hours, right? So essentially you're boiling it down to where you're starting to get a bit more color, right? So we're evaporating that water. We're trying to get the sugars to really be concentrated. And now you'll notice, and you'll notice a bit more color, right? No,
Oh,
not
yeah.
enough.
Yeah.
Maybe it's gotta boil a bit more. But the point is that we're essentially, once we get it boiled down to like a nice little color, we want to move on in the process, so we actually transfer the remaining sap into this one, right? And that allows us to also fill this one back up again, so we're trying to be efficient, right? That's what I mentioned before. We're boiling more sap in a more efficient manner. And then, our final one, let's see if you can tell the difference now.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's a nice, like golden, like very bronze looking colored sap, right? And this is the final one. So essentially, once it finishes boiling here, you're gonna get your maple syrup, right? So I mentioned before that the mothers and the grandmothers were kind of in charge of this. Typically, the grandmothers had like a, I guess you could say that sixth sense, right? To tell like when the maple syrup was ready. So the early European settlers caught on and did their best. Sorry, I'm just gonna step away from the smoke a little bit. Have a bucket with like a type of cloth, right? So for those that like baking, maybe you recognize this is a cheesecloth, right? So they'd have something like this, and essentially you're just trying to pour it in and little by little, it's gonna start to filter through, right? So it acts like a bit of a filtration system, and everything that's that might have fallen into the saps can be cleaned out. All right, and that kind of concludes our settled into spring.
Hi everybody, welcome to the tool shop. So as you can see here, we have a couple tools that you may have seen from other stations. Can anyone point one out for me? Recognize any of them? Yeah, what do you think? Yeah, does anyone remember the name of this? A hint is it's also part of a canoe. Does anyone know? It's called a yoke. Like an egg yolk, almost. So, if you remember from the station you were just at, this was used to carry back the buckets from the forest. You could only carry 2 at a time, but that's okay because these would get very heavy with sap. And we learned that it was usually who carried it back. Do you remember? The kids, yeah! That was tough work. That was to give us much break, right? Did we cover that? Yeah. We're very lucky now that we don't have to carry this anymore during March break. Alright, does anyone see one more tool? Yeah. Yeah. Do you remember the name of this? We have a bit, and we have this piece where you brace yourself against it. What do you think it's called? That jog the other way? A bit and brace. Yeah, you got it. Good job. So, I think you demonstrated it back at the settling station, but this is our fancy orange one. So what we do is we insert it into the tree, you brace all your weight against it, and you turn it around like that. You do it at a slight angle so that the gravity can pull the sap out of the tree. But this is a lot of work. Today we use our battery power drills to do this. But just fun to show it like that, the old school way. And then we have one of our old school buckets with this file. It's pretty fragile, so I won't insert it into the tree. But this piece here is the file, which you hammer into the hole that you just made, and then you hang the tree like that. Some of them come with a lid, which is great because it keeps the rainwater out and anything that can fall from the sky. Alright. Another tool that we have is our cross-section saw. So it's pretty big. I can't handle it just by myself. I need my friends to come help me because you stand on one side of it and your friend stands on the other side and you go back and forth, back and forth. Sometimes we would sing songs to the beat. I won't sing for you today because I don't have to sing. But yeah, that's another one of our fancy tools. Does anyone have any questions?
Sugar Shack.
Yeah, Tyson Josh.
So, pag kumain ka ba ng sugar, magsashock ka?
Sugar Shack.
Sugar Shack. Joke lang. This is... You wanna go in?
Let's go.
Thank you. Ooh. Oh, nice.
The sugar makers here at Terracotta, and this is the first time in 2 years that we've been able to be back doing maple syrup in the park, so we're really excited to see everybody. We've got 200 taps here at Terracotta Conservation Area, and most of our trees are tapped at the Maple Hills Loop along Terracotta Lane. If you've got time for a hike today, it's about 20 minutes out to the sap lines, and if you don't have time, that's okay too. We've got a small demonstration line set up over at the outdoor. We bring that tank back here with our tractor when it's full, and we pump the sap up into this tote up top. So that everybody can see, we've got about 70 gallons. It's just over half full, and that is getting ready to be made into maple syrup. So when sap comes from the tree, what does it look like?
Water.
Yeah. It starts to look like, yeah, it's like water, right? That's because sap is actually 97% water and only 3% sugar. A very little bit of sugar in there. It still looks like water, doesn't it? Now when it comes into this pan over here, take a look at this. See the difference?
Nice color.
Starting to get that nice amber color. Very nice. Yeah. Okay. So when the syrup is almost ready, I'm gonna pour it off of the front pan here and into a big bucket. Our bucket sits here when it's ready to go, and I pour it into a big bucket. And the last thing that I do is I put it over here into our propane finishing pan, and that's where I get it to that 66% sugar. Now, how do you think that I measure the sugar? You think I just dip my finger in there and taste it?
No.
No? Syrup is finished at 104 degrees Celsius. Another way that we measure our sugar is we use what's called a refractometer. Handy little tool, you put some syrup on the lens here, and you look through the eyepiece, and it'll tell you exactly how much sugar is in your syrup. Pretty cool, eh? So every year, we've got about 6 to 8 weeks to collect sap and make syrup. What we need is really cold temperatures at night and really warm, sunny days during the day. As on, it gets gradually darker. So here we've got an amber that has a rich flavor, and a dark that has a robust flavor. And then finally, there's a very, very dark syrup that comes at the end, and that's got a really strong flavor. Can everybody see the 3 colors there?
I can see more.
Yeah, we have a clear one here. This is for testing our syrup.